Welcome to Cancer Talks, a podcast sharing stories of personal transformation and collective healing from people who have been touched by cancer. My name is Cheryl Buck, and I will be guiding today's conversation. If you're listening on an iPhone, click the plus sign in the upper right corner to follow our show and get notified when a new episode is released. My guest today is Molly Reno. Molly is a somatic coach with a long history as a human rights attorney. After her first encounter with breast cancer, she began leading support groups for cancer patients and became certified in a healing technique called emotional brain training. Molly shares about her experience of staying awake to the cycle of life and death. Like all of us, she finds herself going back to sleep sometimes, but she always seems to find a way to wake up again. And that is a true inspiration. Hi, Molly.
Hey, Cheryl.
Hi. Welcome to Cancer Talks.
Oh, thank you so much. It's good to be here.
You're very welcome, and I thank you so much for offering or agreeing to do this conversation that we're going to have. And really happy to get to know more about you. So we're in the same women's group, but different years, the Remarkable Women's Journey. So I feel you are a sister to me because all of the women that we're with, even the ones we haven't met yet. So anyway, thank you so much for being here and agreeing to do this conversation. Let's start this conversation with talking about you and your younger years, going as far forward as you want. Your early life.
Yeah, I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and before too long, my family moved downriver, as it was called, downriver from Detroit, onto an island. And this island is a small island. It's actually the size of Manhattan, 9 miles by 2 miles. And it's in the Detroit River, near the mouth of Lake Erie. And so from this island, we could look off one side and see Canada, and the other side, we would see nearby towns.
Interesting. And does it have a name? Just out of curiosity.
Yes, it does.
Because I want to look on the map.
It's called Gross Eel.
Oh, yeah, I did see that one. Yeah.
So I grew up on this island, and from one perspective, it was a really ideal place to grow up in that there was a lot of nature. We were obviously surrounded by water, a lot of trees, and largely undeveloped in the 50s. And from another perspective, the perspective that I have now as a person who's had cancer twice, it was a nightmare because right across from the island, maybe a quarter mile away, was a coal-burning power plant called Detroit Edison. And so we had the soot from that, all of that coal being burned, and who knows what came our way. And it was so problematic that there came a time when they raised the smokestacks because so much soot was falling on our island and neighboring areas. Of course, that just sent it over to Canada, which caused a different problem.
Oh my gosh.
Such short-term thinking.
Wow.
And then on the other side of the island, we looked out at McLeod Steel. So a plant that's making steel, and all sorts of things would come in the air from McLeod Steel. Also, we could see Wyandotte Chemical, a different chemical plant. And then there was a Marathon oil refinery, which was just a couple miles from the island. And my father would call it the perfume factory because when you drove by, it smelled bad. And when you went by Wyandotte Chemical, that smelled as well. So on the surface, we're living in an idyllic place, but we're surrounded by pollutants and the worst of industry.
That's just shocking. How many years did you live on the island?
I lived there for 14 years. And at one end of the island, there was an area that was fenced off, and it said, "Danger, do not enter." And it turned out that that was a dumping ground for the chemical from Wyandotte Chemical. And it being the 60s, 50s, 60s, as I was growing up, and my being the type of kid I was, and my friends being the type of kids they were, when we saw that sign that said "Danger," we said, "Oh, that sounds interesting."
Oh, no.
So we climbed the fence, and there were these hills, these mounds of this chemical stuff that was slippery. And so we would take off our shoes and we'd run and we'd slide. And it was like you could ski down these little hills.
Oh, my goodness.
So, yeah, unbeknownst to us, it really was dangerous.
Wow. When did you realize that your early years were spent in this poison
Chemical broth.
chemical broth? That's a good one.
Yeah. Yeah.
When did people start thinking, oh, this can't be really good for people to have all these chemicals and pollutants and all that in their lives?
Your question presumes that people think that, which I think a lot of people don't think that.
Yes. Still to this day, do you think?
I think people look the other way. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful, on one hand, place to live. You're driving around looking at the water, and it just has a lot of natural beauty aspects to it. And my friends and I have talked about different parts of what we were exposed to, because I have a friend who had lupus, other friends who had cancer, a number of friends who had MS, and who knows, if it was at a greater rate. Mm-hmm. It seems to us to be at a greater rate than the population in general, but I don't know. Mm-hmm. But truthfully, when I put it all together was yesterday.
Oh.
I was on a Zoom call.
I'm glad I called today.
Yes, I have. I'm from a family of 8, and 6 of us are still alive. And we talk by Zoom for an hour every Sunday.
Oh,
and I told them that I was going to be doing this podcast, and I was trying to remember the name of the oil refinery. And so we just started talking about, oh yeah, the Marathon Oil Refinery. And then my brother mentioned that there was a manufacturing plant for tires that was next to the chemical plant. Oh my God. And then my sister mentioned, well, then there was the Naval Air Station, and we lived about a quarter mile from that. And so whatever, with jets taking off, and also they had nuclear warheads at that Naval Air Station when we were growing up, Nike nuclear warheads.
Oh my gosh.
So I don't know, did any of that get into the air or the water? I just don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's...
Your other siblings, how is their health? Have they, when you were talking yesterday, did they say anything, make that connection, and how have they been? I have 2 older sisters, I have 3 older sisters, and 2 of them have had breast cancer. And I have 3 older brothers, 2 of whom are deceased, and one of them died from cancer. I'm so sorry. That's a lot to take in. Yes. Yeah. And Cheryl, when you asked about are other people today concerned about the pollutants, some of them have been shut down or converted. And I think because it's an island, I don't think all of the pollutants ever impacted the property values. I think it's always been a desirable place to live. That's fascinating. Oh, yeah. My goodness. That makes me wonder more specifically about all the other places that people live and what's around them. And do people take that into consideration now? And like you said, maybe not. They don't see it. So therefore it doesn't exist or whatever. Anyway, that's just fascinating, Molly. What else do you want to say about your early life? I know that you got into different social movements from a fairly early age, at least maybe as a teenager. And I'd love to hear about some of that. And then I know that you went to law school, and that part of your story is just fascinating to me. So,
Sure. I grew up from an early age knowing that I was different and like 5, 6 years old and didn't have a name for it, but later came to know that I was a lesbian. But I knew I was different and that I had to hide that I was different. I had to hide that wasn't attracted to boys and had to hide that as I got older, that I was attracted to girls. And I think that gave me kind of an outsider's viewpoint. I knew I didn't belong. I didn't want to, definitely knew I didn't want to get married. I saw that power imbalance between men and women right away. So I feel like I had an affinity to seeing who else was being treated unfairly. And it drew me to social movements, the first being the grape boycott when I was in high school. Also, I grew up in the 50s and 60s and watched the civil rights movement unfold. And I wasn't far from Detroit. And there was a lot of oppression of African Americans in Detroit. And there was a rebellion due to the police brutality. And so I was present to that, although 20 miles away, but still it was very much in the air. And I could see the injustice. And so I got involved. And from an early age, I was involved in work at county jails and prisons. And when I was in college, the uprising, the rebellion at Attica prison happened. And I watched as the governor of New York sent in the National Guard to just open fire indiscriminately upon the incarcerated men who were in the yard. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. And some of the police action I saw in Detroit, I couldn't believe my eyes. So I got involved in criminal justice reform.
It's so fascinating to me. I grew up in California, suburbs, and I'm sure things were happening, but it didn't, I never thought to go do something about anything. So I'm so impressed with you that it's something that you took in and wanted to do something about. In my later years, I did, but when I was really young, no. So I love that about you, that you started early and you continue on. So then you went to law school and you took on something. Will you share that?
Yes. In the mid-90s, a friend of mine asked me if I would help her bring a class action against the state of Michigan because women and girls who were incarcerated were being routinely sexually assaulted by staff. And I said, sure. And so 3 of us brought this lawsuit. And it was before incarcerated women had any credibility. It was back when only the so-called law-abiding correctional officers, prison employees had credibility. And so we were among the first big cases that came along. And so we filed suit on behalf of women and girls who were being routinely sexually molested by male staff. And over this 13-year period, we filed a series of class actions. And I spent a lot of time with the women and girls who were incarcerated, hearing their story and preparing their cases for trial.
Wow. And then you spent 13 years on all these cases. I can only imagine how that had an effect on you.
Yes. 6 years in, I was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Oh, wow.
And I was 52 and totally surprised to find out that I had breast cancer. one of my older sisters had it by that time, but that seemed odd that she had it.
Yeah.
I just didn't see us as a family that would have cancer. None of our relatives had it that I knew of. Yeah, so there he was, diagnosed with breast cancer.
And did you have symptoms, or what had you check and see? No.
It was just a routine mammogram.
Got it. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So after 13 years of litigating, I can only imagine that you were probably and dealing with breast cancer during the latter half of that time. I can only imagine that you were burned out.
Well, at the end of 13 years, and we had several trials, including a 6-week jury trial. Yes, I was tired. And also the state settled with us, and they completely revised all of their policies, staffing, training, investigation policies around sexual assault. So we really accomplished a lot within that state prison system. And they also agreed to pay $100 million in damages, most of which went to over 800 women and girls who had been assaulted by prison staff.
Wow.
So after that, I was both tired and I didn't have it in me to do another big case like that.
Yeah.
And I thought, why do anything less? So
you set the bar high for yourself.
Yes. It just seemed like a good time to switch. And because I had been dealing with so much trauma, most of the women and girls had been sexually assaulted as children. So I was hearing their stories, their trauma. And as I was hearing that, I came to California to get some training as a somatic coach so that I could try to hold them and minimize the re-traumatization from the litigation. So I was already moving towards healing, both my own and being more fed by being involved in activities that were supporting people in their healing and me in my healing.
Yes.
So yeah, adios to the law. It was great, but I was through.
Enough is enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, first I wanted to just see what did you do for when you got the first breast cancer diagnosis?
It was an early stage breast cancer. And so I had a lumpectomy, and then I had a re-excision. And then my breast had a very deep infection. It was so deep, the infection had to be surgically removed.
Oh my goodness.
And so even though it was an early stage cancer, I ended up essentially bedridden for 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
Because of that infection.
Yeah.
And so that gave me a break. And I remember lying on the couch. It was winter. I was just looking outside. It was so beautiful. But as soon as I was healed from that infection, I was up and back litigating again. And it was like I didn't miss a beat, really.
Yeah. Wow.
They recommended that I have radiation, and I did my own research and decided I'm not having radiation. That doesn't make any sense to me. And so I can't really say that I learned much from having cancer the first time. Subsequently, doctors said, oh, you were ahead of your time. You were smart not to get the radiation. Today, we wouldn't recommend it. So I kind of came away with empowerment, and it didn't faze me much.
Yeah. So you had a second diagnosis recently, right?
Yes, last spring.
Yeah, last spring, yeah.
Yeah. I was diagnosed, and again, it was a small cancer. It seemed like it was going to be very routine. And then I had a test that didn't exist when I had the first cancer. And this test is called Oncotype, and it measures the aggressiveness of the biology of the tumor. And it turned out that my tumor is aggressive. And two different oncologists said to me that they were shocked that a tumor the size of mine would have the level of aggressiveness. So that really took me aback.
Yeah.
And my doctor, oncologist at the time, recommended chemotherapy. And I was really scared about metastasis. So I was seriously considering it. And then I got a second opinion in Michigan, where we have a cottage and where I was headed for the summer. And that doctor, my second doctor, could see. Well, anyways, let me try to get this in order. So I took a hard look at whether to have the chemotherapy and decided against it. The more I learned about it and all the precautions that you have to take and that family members have to take, I thought, no, this is not for me.
What precautions do family members have to take? What did they say?
Well, one thing is they say, if possible, have a bathroom that only you use. Because if any drops of your urine get on the floor, or if you vomit and there's any of this chemotherapy that gets on the floor, it's so toxic. And that anybody cleaning it up should use double gloves.
Oh my gosh.
Like, what?
I have never heard any doctor or any person say that they had heard that before.
Yeah, it was a nurse that gave us an hour training. So I was like, what? Put that in my body? And
oh my goodness.
I looked at the statistics, and it didn't seem like it was going to be worthwhile for me. You know, I would lose the summer, and it takes a long time. It's, to me, a long time to recover. I'm 71. I don't know how many years I have left anyways. So I decided against the chemotherapy. And I heard from my doctor, my oncologist, this could kill you. And I was like, what? I literally wanted to turn around to see who she was talking to, who was standing behind me, because surely
she was not talking to you.
She wasn't talking to me.
Oh, gosh.
So anyways, I through this experience found out that I am at risk of metastasis. And if it metastasized, of course, that could lead to death. So it went from seeming like a really kind of run-of-the-mill cancer, caught early, to all of a sudden like, whoa, this is not in my plan.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Wasn't part of my summer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you did not do the chemotherapy.
Correct.
Yeah. And did you do something, you know, quote unquote do, or did you just let it be and know that you were going to be okay? You know,
I don't know that I'm going to be okay. And I'm so glad that I have that uncertainty. In a way, I'm really glad. It's uncomfortable. And it's the truth about life.
Yeah.
And it's the truth that we don't know anything, really. But there's a veneer of denial that's so easy to go into and to live. And this really shook me up in a big way. So I didn't do the chemo. I did start working with an acupuncturist. I do take Chinese herbs. I do Qigong. I'm doing a lot of different things to support my system. So that's on the outside. And I'm also doing a lot of inner work. Yeah. Because of this.
Yes. So you could say, as I think at Cancer Talks, we say that, or posit that a cancer diagnosis is an opportunity for personal transformation.
Totally.
From what I know about you, you are poster child. That's maybe not a very good way to put it, but you are an example of having this experience of personal transformation in many ways. Can you talk about just some of them that you have mentioned, like your spiritual life? What does that look like for you now as it was before you had the cancer diagnosis? Yeah.
I thought I was in charge. I thought I was in charge of my life. I thought I was in charge of my health. I get a lot of feedback around how healthy I look, how vibrant. And because I have exercised and I've eaten almost entirely organic for many years and a plant-based diet, I mean, I thought I was in charge.
Yes.
And I have 3 older sisters in their 80s. I'm 71. And I thought, well, if they lived into their 80s and they're still alive, surely I can beat them by 10 years because I started earlier taking care of myself. But then this comes along and it just shatters. It just shatters my view of I am in charge.
Yes.
I am not in charge.
You raise a very good point.
Yeah.
Oh boy. And
it was very painful having to face into what? Just my view of how life works.
Mm-hmm.
And as a lawyer, I was able to bring about change. I was sure I was in charge.
Yes.
So now I know I'm not.
Okay.
And it's a blessing. And I try to face into the mystery of life and death.
Yes.
And I took a plant medicine journey this summer, a psilocybin journey, in order to see what didn't I learn first time around when I had cancer. Is there something that I'm now being given another opportunity to learn from this second diagnosis?
I love that. Yes. And what did you find?
And what came to me was an image. It was summer, and I'm at a lake doing this journey, and I get this vision of this small brown leaf on the green grass, and the edges are starting to curl. And what came to me, the voice told me that I need to start thinking about life, not just as life, that life is a cycle of life and death.
Yes.
And
wow.
Of course, in our culture in particular, we don't look at death.
So true.
And so it's disturbing as well as freeing for me to look into the mystery of life and death. And when I turned 70, it was 71, one of my intentions was to try to make my mortality more real. And 6 months later, I get this diagnosis.
Oh my God.
And I was like, well, I didn't mean...
you have to be careful what you ask for. You have to say it the right way. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, but what you got, that is just, I mean, I have been having dinners every couple of times a month with my sister's father-in-law. And the first dinner that I had, he was 95 or 96. And clearly he was at the end of his life. And I never he just passed away about a month ago, and he was 98. And I had that question always when we were having dinner. What about your death? Do you ever think about it? I mean, he would say things that he knew that he was at the end of the road, but I never had the guts or whatever was going to take for me to bring up that topic. So I really appreciate that you're bringing it up. And it's this hidden, I mean, we act like it's a secret or something. We can't tell it. And boy, I think that a transformation in that area of life, living, is just so important, valuable, and exciting and freeing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And it's a process. It's not like an insight.
Mm-hmm.
It's a process for me of ever deepening, ever chipping away a bit more at the denial.
Got it. Yeah.
That of death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What if it was in the conversation in the world, or at least, in a certain group of people, which I know it is for some people, but very few, it would make life all that more appreciated, valuable, like you were saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
go ahead.
It also has me reevaluate. How am I spending my time?
Yes.
Now that I can see that time is short, even if I don't die from cancer, I'm 71. It's around the corner.
Right.
And how am I spending my time? Am I really, is this something that is really where I want to spend time and energy?
Yeah.
And it's a very good inquiry for me.
Yes. Have you come up with thoughts about or realizations about how you're spending your time? And have you come up with things that maybe you say, maybe I don't want to spend my time doing this anymore? Anything specific come to mind?
Yes, I'm engaged in fewer activities. I still have too much engagement because I'm busy, too much engagement. And I love what I'm engaged in, and I have dropped some things. And also, I'm in touch with fewer people. I need more time to spend more internal time. Yeah. And I also feel slower inside. And my partner's mother lived with us for her last 30 days. And one day, and she knew that the end was near, it was hospice. And one day she called to us, quick, come here, quick, look. And she was pointing to clouds in the sky. And I looked, and I was busy. I needed to go to work. And I looked and I said, wow, she sees something that I don't see. And it was beautiful, but it was just clouds in the sky to me.
Right.
And I know that people when I've read that when you get a terminal diagnosis, that suddenly everything's precious. And I'm having more moments where I stop, I look at the clouds, and I'm like, wow, look at what a gift we have. So I'm slower inside, and I have more moments of deep appreciation.
I'm tearing up. You really hit a nerve. Yeah. Good nerve.
Yeah.
Ooh. One of the things that you mentioned to me on the last time we talked was your exploring this experience of being part of a larger life force. And I'd love to hear you just elaborate on that a little bit.
I'll try. I'm studying with a non-dual teacher by the name of Miranda MacPherson.
Yes.
And she, you know her?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, wonderful.
I've done some work with her up in Marin County. Right?
Great.
Yeah.
Great. So as you know, then she encourages the direct experience of, it's hard to language it, the direct experience of the energy of life, the direct experience of loving goodness. And I'm kind of a skeptic, and working with her where she has me and other people feeling into the ground of the earth, being supported, and to know that underneath that ground of the earth, there's a larger ground of the universe, and allowing myself to open into sunshine, the experience, all that we're given by the energy of life.
Yes.
It's hard to put words to it. And
yeah, I got it when you said that.
Thank you.
And all of that is around us, in us, under us, and we just walk right through it. Like,
yes,
without noticing.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's
and
amazing.
She talks about there being loving goodness like sunshine, that it just is. It's nothing we earn. It's not like there's some personal higher power that's giving it to one person and not to another. It's just there.
Right.
And as you say, we walk through it, but we can stop. At least I'm starting to stop and experience it more.
Yes. You shared a poem with me by Lucille Clifton. And I wondered if you wanted to share your reaction or the feelings that you got from it, or the revelations, or...
Yeah. Lucille Clifton was a contemporary of Langston Hughes, and he helped her become more well-known. And there's a poem, I'm going to read the first part of the poem that speaks so much to me. It starts, "The light that came to Lucille Clifton came in a shift of knowing, when even her fondest sureties faded away. It was the summer she understood that she had not understood." And it goes on from there. But it just so spoke to my experience. I had these sureties. I was in charge. And like, whoa, in a shift of knowing, when I heard you could die from this, it could metastasize, my reality shattered.
Yes.
And I came to understand that I had not understood.
Yes.
I understood that I had not understood.
Yes.
Yeah. And the poem ends by saying, "And the truth came furiously knocking at her door."
Yes.
I feel like that's happening to me.
Yes.
I was told you could die from this, then because it could be a recurrence of my earlier cancer. I had scans of the whole body, and there's a lesion that's on my lung. And so I'm getting a scan every 3 months to see if it's growing. But that really shook me up.
Yes.
And so far it's not growing, and it's most likely benign, but it's there for me. It's like, no, don't go back to sleep. Here's another reminder that of your mortality. Life is short. Yeah. And then a couple months later, I had a mammogram, and it was last week, I get the letter. I mean, I was told it was fine, but I get a letter that says, well, it was fine, but you have very dense tissue in your breasts. So mammograms are not nearly as accurate on your type of breast. And also there's some indication that your type of breast tissue may be more likely to produce cancer than other types of breast tissue. So that was another, don't go back to sleep.
That's right.
It's like, whoa. Each time it's like, whoa, Nellie. Me? Is this really addressed to me?
Did you check the envelope?
Yeah, I did.
It wasn't for your neighbor. Oh boy. Yikes.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So getting that letter, are you going to do anything differently than what you have been doing? Or are you just going to stay awake and know that these ways of being that you've come up with for yourself and for your own health and sanity and spirituality and all of that, you just keep at it, if that's the right way to say it? I don't mean like a to-do list or anything, Yeah. I don't mean it that way, but I just wonder that if you're on the right path, for yourself, that you...
I feel as though I'm in the moment. I'm on the right path.
Mm-hmm.
And, there will be curves and detours and this and that. And again, it's a very good reminder to me, don't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Because of course I do. And it's not like there's an intellectual realization that does anything. It's got to be in my body, and it's being reminded. And these things that are coming to me, like the lesion, like the doctor saying, this could kill you. And I bring that to mind so that I can stay sharp and make the most of my time. I'm alive, and I will not always be alive. And so, wow, I don't want to sleepwalk. I want to be as awake as I can be.
Yeah. Beautifully said. A lesson for us all. I so appreciate you and your journey and your lovely way of sharing all of it. I'm very moved in tears. I know you will, this conversation that we've had will touch many people and support them and wake them up. Know that there is something to be awakened to. That the way we're just going through life, it's mostly not awake. I know that for myself. Anyway, I just want to thank you. First, let me just ask you this, Molly. Is there anything else that you want to say? You have given us so much to be with, and for that, I'm forever grateful. But I want to just see if there's anything else that comes to mind.
There's two things. One is I didn't talk much about the experience of fear. And I don't want to leave that out, that's been an important part of this journey for me, is just feeling that fear and watching it, feeling it move through my body like an electrical current. And I've talked about a lot of the benefits for me, but I don't want to leave out how disturbing and fearful and how hard it was to make medical decisions. So thank you for the opportunity to say that, include that. And also stepping into my vulnerability. That's been so important to me, trying to soften and allow and open to my vulnerability and to all of the experiences that come my way. And I want to express my deep gratitude for the opportunity to have this conversation, Cheryl, and the earlier conversation that we had. And it's just been an opportunity to look back and gather my thoughts and preserve my experience.
Oh gosh, you're welcome.
So thank you. And to give back to your podcast, because last summer, in the depth of my distress and my fear, I was able to listen to other people, their inner journey and of having cancer. And it was extremely helpful. So thank you for allowing me to give back.
Thank you so much for saying that.
And thank you for being touched. And I feel touched as well. Great to be with you.
If you enjoyed this conversation, please leave a review in your podcast app. Cancer Talks is a platform for anyone who has been touched by cancer. Write to us at info@cancertalks.com if you have a story to share. If you're moved to donate, and we hope you are, please visit cancertalks.com/donate.